You join me inside the Jaguar I-Pace, which is what? It's an electric vehicle, a full battery electric vehicle. No range extender, no internal combustion of any kind. It is the second premium battery electric vehicle, I suppose, after and Tesla. It is the Jaguar is the second manufacturer to get in on doing it. It's funny, isn't it, if you said to me 10, 15 years ago who are going to be the two manufacturers in the world who are the first to bring premium battery electric vehicles to market, I don't think you'd have necessarily said somebody I've never heard of, plus Jaguar. But this kind of makes sense. You know, new technology arrives and it is usually expensive, and then it filters down to the rest of the range. With battery electric vehicles, why did we ever think it's a good idea to go from the bottom up, so the Renault Zoe and the Nissan Leaf, and then push onwards? Surely it makes sense, where people have got a bit of money to spend, to encourage those early adopters who have got somewhere to charge a car at home, and expendable income, and the money to spend on a car that has a really viable range. The range of this car is around 300 miles. That's a pretty decent, usable range, isn't it? Now, there are obviously the caveats about when you're going to charge it, how long it takes to charge. 100 kilowatt charger, you know, you get an 80% charge in under an hour, so on and so forth. So there's all those issues that if an electric car does not suit your lifestyle, look away now. If it does, however, or if you're just interested, welcome to, I guess, the future of a kind. Because one day, everything will be EV powered, won't it? I mean, you know, exceptions aside. And what's that like? Well, from a certain point of view, an EV is a fairly straightforward thing. A load of batteries, a motor or two, put it in a car. And from that point of view, it's actually a very simple proposition. There is a bit more to it than that.
Beneath the I-Pace's aluminium body structure, the platform follows a fairly typical skateboardy template that electric cars use. The battery pack, here about 430 lithium-ion cells totaling 90 kilowatt hours, sits on the floor between the axles, and each axle has its own permanent magnet electric motor with an inverter attached to it. This means the I-Pace is four-wheel drive, and it's this, Jaguar says, which allows the axles to be out at each corner. If it was two-wheel drive, the rear wheels would have to be pushed further forward. And yes, it's all waterproof, so the I-Pace can wade through 500 millimeters of water. At the front, suspension is by double wishbones, and at the back there is an integral link. You can have coil springs on passive dampers, the same with active dampers, or as we've tested, on-air springs which allow an adjustable ride height.
And all of that means what from an I-Pace perspective? Well, it's a car that is about the size of an XF, but with even more space inside. It's quite wide because it's an aluminium structure, but not obnoxiously so. It's got a light area interior, but what's quite cool about it is that it does still feel like a premium Jaguar product. It's well finished inside. It's more nicely finished inside than probably any Tesla, but I think a Model 3 in particular. Some people go, oh my goodness, a new electric car, it's going to kill Tesla. Oh my goodness, you know, it's going to be a problem for another car manufacturer. I don't believe that's true. The overall market for EVs is growing at such a rate, and it is so small at the moment, that there is space in there for everybody. Remember when MG launched the MG-F? For overseas readers, it's a car from MG Rover Group that had its engine in the middle. At that point, Mazda MX-5 sales did not fall off a cliff. They went up because it gathered more interest to that market. And I could see the more EVs that go on sale, the more EVs from everywhere that will be sold. But anyway, enough of all that. What is this one like? Well, it's fast, I can tell you that much. And it's quite heavy. In terms of power delivery, in terms of what it's like to drive, are we at risk of creating things that are all, in some ways, a little bit similar? An electric motor, you talk about an inefficient electric motor and a really efficient one. This one's got a really efficient one. You're looking at a difference between sort of 90 and 95% efficiency. You're talking very small differences. There's only 3 people in the world, really, who are capable of making the batteries to a decent extent. One Japanese, two South Korean. These batteries are from LG. 2 electric motors gives a really stable, steady driving characteristic, even though actually the front one usually does the regeneration and the back one usually does the driving. When you ask more of this chassis, it is so fast, honestly. It's ridiculous. 400 horsepower, but well over 550 150 foot-pounds of torque. It's just absurd. It's really cool to drive, but EVs do have a bit of a driving characteristic to them. Jaguar says this car drives like a Jaguar. Well, it feels like no Jaguar I've ever driven. It's just absurd, and because their noise levels are really low, there is a fake noise in this actually, and you can turn it up or down. If I put this car into dynamic mode, that ups the noise. In quiet mode, sorry I'm rambling a bit, there's quite a lot to get through, and it's not like reviewing a normal car because there is so many different things to tell you. For example, uses anti-noise so that in comfort mode everything's really quiet. When you put it into dynamic, not only does it cancel the anti-noise, it adds an artificial noise. Sound good? I quite like it. I might turn it down if I owned one of these and used it every day to go to the station and back. I might sort of get a bit tired of the warp drive effect, but it's quite cool. And you can do that kind of thing with an EV. What are the problems with an EV? Well, one, you know, does it fit your life or not? You decide, you worry about that. Two, and this is a thing, and I wonder whether this will be an ongoing thing. Although the centre of gravity is very low, and although the weight distribution is terrifically 50-50, and although you can put power exactly where you want, when you want, which is brilliant, the ride of these cars is never that great. This is probably as good as it gets for an EV, but the ride quality on a saloon is still better. A Jaguar saloon in particular is better. It weighs from 2,200 kilograms. So I've no idea what this one comes in at. Maybe it's 2.3 tons. Maybe that's part of the problem. You know, you're trying to get sporty characteristics, and there is a low centre of gravity, so roll is fairly well contained. But trying to get sporty-ish characteristics into a car which is heavy, there is no question. But they've tried to make it do what some Jaguars do. So when you turn and you trail the brakes, it feels like it's helping it rotate into the corner. And certainly in terms of powering through a corner, that it's so capable. I wouldn't be surprised if it was one of the fastest point-to-point cars around, if that's what you wanted. I'm not sure that's what I want. Anyway, it steers quite nicely. It's comfortable enough. Drives. There are elements to the steering of Jaguar-ness about it. Doesn't drive like a traditional Jaguar. There is a big raft of infotainment. It's a new system. A Jaguar, it's a bit like the Range Rover Velar, actually. The stuff at the bottom does the heating and ventilation, and then you get the navigation and so on at the top, where you have to move your eyes from the road a bit less. In some ways I like that. I like the fact that there are clear dials for some things so that you don't have to go into a touchscreen for everything. The touchscreen itself is not as good as the one in a Tesla. It is not as good as the infotainment system you get in a BMW or an Audi. And if you don't mind me getting away from the whole road testing thing for a moment, so it can do things off-road that you can't do in an internally combusted vehicle. So it has the Land Rover-like system, which is like an off-road cruise control, where it guides your speed up or downhill at any, you know, you preset it on the wheel, and it just tries to maintain that speed off-road. This does that brilliantly, because it doesn't have to worry about always maintaining drive to everywhere and preventing the engine from stalling or worrying about the, you know, softening the torque converter and stuff. It just decides exactly what power it wants to put to what wheel, whenever it wants to, however it wants to. That's fabulous. That's really clever. And presumably, it can even mimic the power delivery of other things. So Dakar motorbikes, the big singles, apparently they, you know, on sand, sometimes they won't get stuck, and part of that is because of the pulsing of the engine. You know, dum, 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 and you wouldn't get that on a four-cylinder motorbike, because it would just be, be providing torque too much all the time and might bury itself in rather than helping to dig. So I don't quite understand. But anyway, you could do that with an electric motor if you wanted to, and you couldn't do that with a diesel engine and an 8-speed automatic gearbox and all of the locking diffs in the world. So from a perspective of off-roading, from a future Land Rover perspective, I think it's really cool, really interesting. You could end up with a car that goes further than any other as a result of the fact that it's electric powered, which is cool. But in summary then, there is some brilliant tech. It's really compelling, it's really, really impressive, and the potential for it only just goes on. If it doesn't fit your life, you're not going to have one. If it does, I would be in very little doubt when I say this. I think this is the best electric car on sale today.